Well, hello, America. I'm your host, Commander Al Palmer, United States Navy retired, and I'm here for another special edition of Stars and Stripes, our communication with the public about what STARS, which is standing together against radicalism and racism in the services, does. We're kind of an element that focuses a bit on what's going on in the military, in military life, and in actions, but also a little bit broader about the issues in our society which we find troubling. Today, I've got a very special guest with me. He has written an exceptional book about the silent nature of red aggression, meaning communism, socialism, Marxism, Bolshevism, however you want to describe it, as an advancing silent attack on the United States of America. His name is Casey Fleming, and Casey has written an amazing book called The Red Tsunami, The Silent Storm Killing Your Freedom. And that's the freedom we all treasure as Americans, in which we are unique in this world in promoting. So with that, I want to introduce Casey, who's with us here today. And Casey, you're here live in the flesh. It's good, sir, to have you with us today.
It's great to be with you, Al. Love to get into this today with you.
Well, listen, tell us, so for our audience, tell us a little bit about your background. You've been involved, as I know, with both government and the private sector now for a number of years, both as an employee of people like IBM and cybersecurity, but also advising everybody from the Pentagon to the FBI and in between about the threats of hidden cybersecurity issues and foreign intrusion in the country. So I want to welcome you and then expand on that a little bit for our audience so they get to know you a little bit.
Sure. My background comes from technology and management consulting. I founded IBM's cyber division back in the day, ran a global risk and strategy unit for Deloitte Consulting, and did several Silicon Valley turnarounds since. In 2011, I was basically sent or appointed to an FBI briefing where they're talking about intellectual property theft and the Fortune 500. And I'm like, wait a minute, these are my clients. Why don't I know about this? How serious is this? So I commissioned a study, and it was much worse than we figured out. And I decided, did I need to be another cybersecurity CEO, or does the country really need to understand who's really behind this? So we had about 3,400 cybersecurity software companies at the time, but nobody was focused on the enemy. And even at that time, all roads led back to the Communist Party. So I founded a company, founded a research team, an intelligence group in 2011. And here we are in 2026, being at the tip of the spear with who the real enemy is and what the real threat is to the American people. And it is silent. It is insidious. You sense something is wrong, something is happening, but you cannot connect the dots until now. Back to you, Al.
So how did this all come about, though? I mean, for those of us like me that are old enough to remember the Cold War, life was a lot easier in the 50s and 60s until probably we started in Vietnam. And that's probably when the KGB started moving in and doing a lot of underground stuff with the anti-war movements and all that. But before that, in the Cold War, obviously the Soviet Union was big in pushing communism and all the other control factors they could on the world. But can you kind of nail that down a little bit for us?
Well, when the Berlin Wall fell and communism fell, quote, for Russia, the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, came in and filled the void immediately. So fast forward a little bit forward to the Desert Storm. The Chinese Communist Party, first of all, they've been in power since 1949. And don't forget, in Korea, the American warriors actually fought the Chinese directly. And even in Vietnam, we were fighting the Chinese indirectly, but we were fighting the Chinese. And by the way, today we're fighting the Chinese and the Russians with Iran, Venezuela, the Mexican drug cartels, and so on. So again, the enemy to watch here, the elephant in the room, is the Chinese Communist Party. But that's really how we got here. So they studied Desert Storm and they said, we cannot compete against shock and awe. So what do? So at that point, they redefined what war was, what actual war was. And it's not conventional. It's called unrestricted war. And it's in the continuum leading up to conventional warfare. So what's unrestricted warfare? And by the way, 2 Chinese Air Force colonels wrote the book, Unrestricted War, or Unrestricted Warfare, in 1999. And they were highly accurate in what they've done. The CCP has just expanded upon it since 1999. So for 30 years, they've been leveling an unrestricted war on the U.S. civilian population. And the plan is never needing to get to conventional or kinetic war. So unrestricted war on every man, woman, and child kind of looks like this. Okay, so let me back up. So when COVID hit, everybody knew something was up. What's the master strategy? What's the master plan? And somebody, everybody, and I was one of them. Will somebody stand up and just tell us the truth? Will we get somebody to tell us the darn truth? Nobody would do it. This book was endorsed by 21 of the who's who in global intelligence, as well as subject matter experts. And since the book has been published, it's grown to 23 endorsements. Voluntary, I didn't ask for them. They're like, hey, I want to endorse your book. One of those was Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. The other one was Brigadier Blaine Holt. So that's really the message. I was elected to be the poster child to get the message out. So the message has to get to every man, woman, and child. So, and I refer to it as a book, but it's not a book. It's a whistleblower's expose, and it's a survival guide. A lot of times people say, hey, look, thanks for telling me the problem, but what do I do tomorrow? And when I typically speak, that's always the question. Number one, where's your book? And I never wanted to write a book, still don't. And where's your book? And what do we do tomorrow morning? What can I do tomorrow morning to fix myself and to protect my family? And that's really what precipitated me writing this thing. And the purpose was to get it out to every man, woman, and child. This book, this survival guide, this expose needs to be in every high school, every university, every college, to unwind the last 20 and 30 years of Marxism, socialism, communism in our schools. That has basically captivated our young to where they're voting for people like Mondami, which is an absolute communist, into New York City and to the rest of our blue state cities, because this is what it is. It's this communism push is a very insidious push, and it looks like normal daily life. Actually, the Chinese Communist Party calls it, and Chinese culture call it death by 1,000 cuts. Every cut smarts, but not enough to go to the emergency room. And by the time you get to 100, you're done.
So let's go back just for a second with the thought about COVID as an instrument in injecting this into our society. At the time, everybody was going along with the idea that, gee, we got to do something. People are sick and dying. We got to have a vaccine. But underneath that was the existence of the Wuhan labs and all the things that the Chinese were doing and experimenting. And Mr. Fauci and company came in and said, no, not so fast. This is bats in the marketplace, and that's really what the problem is. Is that the kind of pushback you're talking about from the CCP? That they were fighting that, not internally, but externally to us?
Well, certainly. I want to make one other point. We as a country, as a nation, as government, have been fooled and manipulated and tricked by the CCP. Ever since we put them into Bill Clinton put them into the WTO, they have never honored anything they've ever agreed to. It's always plausible deniability and so on. So it's this whole, you have to understand your enemy. You have to become intimate with your enemy before you can understand what's going on. And really, in the current events today, 90% of all the current events, lead back to the Chinese Communist Party and their unrestricted warfare strategy on the US, and not just the US, the rest of the free world. Their goal is to completely replace the United States as the world dominant power. They feel it's their right and their destiny. They feel for the last 2,300 years they ran the world, and in the last 100 years, where don't forget the Americans went into China to help them kick out the Japanese. They refer to that century started with the Opium Wars of 1850. That was the century of great humiliation, and their plan is to completely take over the world. In other words, no more freedom with American people and the freedom that we all grew up with, and to replace that us and the world order with a communist world order.
So to do that, though, it takes a lot of effort. And for the longest time, probably from the 60s into the 80s, that was pretty well hidden within the covers of politicians and institutions in our country. But it's now emerged. But as you say, that's because they always have looked at this as the long game. They're not in it for the immediate results. They're willing to sit around for 20, 50 years in order for it to happen, right?
100%. Their goal is to take over the world at their 100-year anniversary, which would be 2049. But they're on track to take over the world by our estimates and our intelligence by probably 2035. You've got the World Economic Forum that's signed up with them. You've got the Axis, where you've got China as the grand master. Underneath China, you've got Russia, Iran, Pakistan, North Korea, Venezuela, the drug cartels. And under Iran, the CCP has Iran managing, the IRGC managing the 6 terrorist organizations. All of these are the axis against freedom and the American people. And the problem is, all this is, all the chaos that we're seeing, it's the thing. Let me stir up a lot of chaos. In other words, viruses, blackouts, whatever's engineered to come over, next week, next month, next year. This is not, so whenever chaos is happening, you're losing your freedom. It's meant to be a distractionary tactic. And again, the point is, this is non-military. This is all civilian based, and it's called unrestricted warfare. One other point. We knew day one that, and we've been saying it since way before day one when COVID came out, that it was an engineered bioweapon out of the Wuhan labs. Now, the other thing is, there are also, and we know that that's the case today, all the intelligence comes out to say it was an engineered bioweapon from the Wuhan lab. I think it's even on the White House's website. But there's also COVID-2, COVID-3, and other nanoparticle viruses that are meant to be dispersed by drones over New York City, sporting events, and so on. So, you have to understand really the diabolical nature of your enemy, the dark mafia regime that it is. And it is a terrorist organization masquerading as a nation state. And we're being played like crazy when you see all the meetings and peace meetings we have with China and so on. One last point. We're at a war right now with Iran. Make no mistake, the elephant in the room is the Chinese Communist Party. The CCP helped build up the IRGC over the past dozen plus years. They've been resupplying, rearming Iran. So we're in a fight with the proxy of Iran in the front, but with China, the CCP, and Russia. So we're in that fight today. So this is extremely relevant that we're having this discussion, this podcast today, and it'll shed light and it'll connect the dots to really what's going on.
So there's an element, though, that fights to support that, even within the United States, and freedom of expression and speech and all is great. But when it comes to fighting reality, that's what bothers me an awful lot, as it does you, and I know, and other people. You've got the real events happening, and yet at the same time, people are saying, no, don't look at that, nothing to see here. What's in it for the domestic side of that, notwithstanding the efforts of the Chinese and others to take us over? but what's in it for the people here who support that kind of thing?
Well, it's emotion. The radical left is based on all emotion. They don't look at logic. They don't look at fact. It's all about creating this emotional space in people's heads and to drive them. Lenin called that useful idiots. Take Black Lives Matter, for example. You saw a lot of people. First of all, Black Lives Matter, make no mistake, it was a Marxist communist movement. It came out along with about a dozen other movements right when COVID came out. There was a plan, okay? And BLM, you saw a lot of first of all, BLM hijacked the Black community. They were played,
Well,
okay?
and the people who founded it were actually trained in Cuba
They
as
were, and they
Marxists.
were three Marxist women that started it. And I think at
Yep.
least one of them is in prison now for absconding with a bunch of money and bought three mansions with the money and so on. But make no mistake. In fact, we have one of the strongest proponents against BLM and communism in the Black community. And he's in the book. His name is Vince Elliott Ellison. Fantastic guy. Of course, he's Black. And he calls out, along with another guy named Dr. David McGarry. And he was with EBLM, and that's Every Black Life Matters, because they call out BLM for what it was, and it was a total communist movement. And what that is to remove rights. It's to focus, to take away everything that holds our society together, which are laws, law enforcement, the police, going after the whole racial thing and so on, and amplifying racism, which there wasn't really a problem. But if you look at social media and you look at mainstream media, race is a massive problem in the United States. And I'm here to tell you, no, it's not. We all get along pretty darn well. So all this stuff is magnified by your enemy. And what's good for the left, meaning, and I'll say this, the left is being played just as much as the right and just as much as the center. Remember, we all share much more in common with each other than we do with our enemy, who wants to and not just wants to, is destroying us bit by bit, day by day, freedom, peace by freedom, peace, or piece of freedom by piece of freedom. So the point is, the left feels, they're just on an emotional train, and those who subscribe to the radical left's agenda are just on the emotional train. They don't, and by the way, the radical left think that they're going to get a seat at this communist table. They think, hey, look, I supported this and I deserve my golden chair. If you understand anything about communism, first of all, it has never worked ever in history. And all the power is up at the very few elite at the top, and anybody that helped them get there gets a bullet to the head. So that's communism. And one other point, the Chinese Communist Party has murdered more of their own people than double all communist regimes combined. Let that sink in. Back to you, Al.
So because of the nature, as you explained earlier, that Marxism, communism is based on creating chaos and solving problems that they can create, knowing what the solution probably is, which is them. You're in trouble. You got problems with race. You got problems with employment. Can't afford food. We're here to help you. This is what the new mayor, by the way, in New York is running on, right? So this is the issue that exists, and it's almost like a football game in a way. But in sports, as in life, an awful lot of the time, who's on defense has the advantage because they know what their structure is. They know what they can do. Somebody who's the attacker has to figure out how to get in, how to maneuver around, and how to win. So usually the advantage is somewhat in the favor of the defense in that case, and that applies to war as well. But in the case of our country, because we have the overlayment of freedom and constitutional rights, which are all absolutely wonderful, we all know that. But it also creates a bit of a weakness, does it not, in the fact that we don't always discount the things we hear that are negative or don't make any sense. we let that go and we kind of live with it. Is that not what's happening here today?
That's
The
exactly what's
cries
happening.
of racism, cries of
That's
racism,
it.
and in ignorance of the state of the people, because we got to live, we got to eat, we got to do all this. Yeah, we all know that. That's why we're human beings.
That's exactly what's going on. It's basically to remove the rights, create fear, create confusion, remove the rights one by one where you won't notice. Um, and by the way, Marxism and socialism are where you vote in. You're tricked, and you vote in somebody that says we've got utopia, we've got it figured out. Everybody's going to be equal. Everybody's going to be rich. There's going to be no problems, and you're going to love it. Well, and so that's where you vote in, and it's called suicide. And then
Yeah.
once you voted in, the natural next step is communism, where you don't vote communism is in, it's already there, and the hammer comes down. You do what we tell you to do, or we're going to kill you and your family. Now that's communism. That's really what's going on. And with communism, the state controls all production and all consumption. You're only going to have one car, and it's only going to be this model, or you're not
Yep.
going to have a car at all. And all these different things. So the state owns all of it. They also own all real estate and personal property for the most part. So it's something that people need to understand, and are young that have come through, our Gen Zs and Gen Xs that have come through universities and colleges and high schools. Marxism is in most of our schools. It's being taught. There are over 500 Chinese communist Confucius classrooms in US middle schools. There were over 120 Confucius institutes in US colleges and universities. At the peak in 2018, there were 405,000 Chinese student spies in US universities. Trump just increased that number to 600,000 Chinese student spies. Well, how do you know they're spies? Well, the reason is, if you know your enemy, that whenever students leave the country, they have to check in with their local police station. Only it's not a police station in China, it's a government station. It's a Chinese
Yeah.
government, communist government station. And you check in, they tell you when you have to check back in, and you have to swear an oath and allegiance to the Chinese Communist Party, and you have a national duty to spy. We don't understand that in the free world, which we've got all
Yeah.
these rights that are given to us when we're born, but those rights are all being used and taken away and manipulated because of our free society. They're manipulated by our enemies.
Again, thinking about the dilemma of today's younger crowd, being captivated by the promises of utopia and all these things that they get. Uh, what happens when they don't appear? Are the people going to be then convinced that that was a mistake, they shouldn't have gone with it? Or do they just get kind of comfortable and realize there'll be something else coming along? Because as a
Here's
country, America was built and founded on the freedom of the individual, not groups of people, but as the individual. We were able to pursue our own actions to make our way in the world, but also be responsible for it. And with the knowledge that there's no promise that that was going to work, it's up to the individual to make it work. We now are relying more and more on government and governments to provide that. And it seems to me that's where people like the CCP and others have entered in. We're here to supply that stuff for you. We know you want it. We know you rely on it. So we're here to help you with that. And that gets back into the schools and education, I guess, that go with it. But it just bothered me all these years that the joy of being American was being able to do something to make your way in the world and provide for a family and to be successful in life. The reverse of that is, like you say, suicidal. If you're in it just to produce bad stuff, you're going to get bad stuff, and it's not going to be a fun life for you. And that maybe is where we need to talk a little bit more about results that come from doing something about it.
Yeah, you asked, what happens when utopia doesn't present itself, that it doesn't materialize. Well, this is
Okay.
what happens. You're now in Cuba. You're now in communist China. You're in communist Russia. You're in communist Venezuela. Um, you know, that's what's happening. So it's too late. By the time you wake up and you figure it out, and there's no utopia, it's done. They
Yeah.
already have you, and your freedom is gone and gone forever. Look at the Cubans. And look at all these other countries that I just mentioned. There is no instance where socialism or communism has ever been successful. And then I get arguments like, well, what about China? And I'm like, yeah, China is a communist state, and it's not successful because their economy is getting ready to implode. But remember, they had to reach out with Deng Xiaoping back with the World Trade Organization with Clinton,
Yeah.
to participate in the capitalist side, which they're using Western capitalism as a basis for their economy. But all their cultural issues are still top down totalitarian barbarianism in that whole thing there. So that's really what's at stake and how it materializes. The problem is our young have been sold a bill of goods. And by the way, they're on social media all day, every day, getting reinforced all day long. Their critical thinking is being robbed from them forever. Their mind is
Yes.
being taken over by your enemy because these kids, Gen Z spends, some of them spend 9 hours a day on TikTok, and they get all of their news from TikTok, which is, let me just tell you what TikTok is. It is a weaponized military application in the hands of our children. It is a Trojan horse. Remember, my background is technology. And then when Trump says, hey, we're going to sell this to Oracle and everything's going to be good, as a former software executive, and a retired software executive at that, you don't sell software and all of a sudden it's all new and it's all fresh. That's, your information is still sent to the Chinese Communist Party. And ByteDance is a Chinese communist company who still owns 20% of TikTok. And ByteDance still owns the algorithm. In other words, the engine. So,
Yep.
it's all, we're being sold a bill of goods, and the American people need to wake up. Hence, that's why I sat down and I wrote a 3-year book in 6 months. And because it needed to get out, we had a limited amount of time to wake up the American people. And that's why I ended up writing the book. Again, this book is for every American. It's for every mailbox. I challenge the audience, the listener, to buy 10 books. I already know in one of our last discussions, somebody wrote in the chat and said, I bought 10 books for all my kids and grandkids. Well, everybody needs to do that. And the book is not for me. Trust me, I don't need the book. The book is for you. Buy 10 books, hand them out to friends, family, neighbors, even people across the aisle, and tell them, everybody that you hand a book to, you need to buy 10 books, because it will unwind all the nonsense that's been fed our kids. And our kids are robots now because from cognitive warfare standpoint, which is control of the mind. And once the Chinese Communist Party has control of our kids' minds, they have it forever. And let me tell you, TikTok is already pushing out, I can't tell you the number of American middle-aged women and younger kids that are playing Mahjong, which is a Chinese game, an old Chinese game. On top of that, you go to TikTok, they're teaching our kids how to be more Chinese. You need to drink Chinese tea. You need to be doing these things and these things. So here's one last thing. We have a video of a CCP operative on TikTok telling our children, and if you want this, Al, I'll send it to you and you can send it out to the audience.
I'd appreciate it.
Folks, listen. And they're talking to our kids, a Chinese communist operative, CCP operative, saying, listen, we want you to continue to organize, stay in your groups, wait for this signal, which is rebellion, chaos on the streets. Wait for the signal. Then we want you to go to those houses that have the American flags out front. They will have the food and the ammunition and the guns that you need. Go to those houses, wait for the signal. And this has been repeatedly posted on TikTok. And if you ask your kids, they'll tell you, oh no, I haven't seen anything like that. But we have total evidence of it. In fact, like I said, I'll send you the clip. That should shock you to the core that your enemy, as we are busy taking our kids to soccer games and we're waiting for those Dallas Cowboys or those San Francisco 49ers to come on TV, our enemy is having their way with our kids, with our rights, and with our freedom.
I've got one of my granddaughters is 6 years old now, and she can do things with an iPhone that you can't imagine. I can't do. And she's all in some of that stuff, even at that young age. And that's what kind of concerns us, isn't it? That's spreading now among not just kids and teenagers, but all the way down into elementary school or younger. And education is a key, I think, to all of this. But that does bring up the question, okay, we know a lot more about that even today because it's more out in the open. We don't know all we need to know, as you're so well putting out. And your book is extremely good at doing that. It's a survival guide of what we do now. But that's got to get out into the general public so that they can accept it and not just look at it and pass it by and say, yeah, but we still have everything we need. We got the iPhones, we got the house, we got the car. We're okay. No, we're not okay. We're at war, and we got to keep it that way, and we got to make sure we know then how to counter the threat that exists out there, right?
Yes. Let me just be very, very clear. Every American man, woman, and child is at war today. They have been at war. They sense it, they know it, but nobody would step up and tell them the truth. That's why I wrote the book. This is World War III. This is what World War III looks like. It may never go to conventional because we may end up capitulating. Let's talk about all these different methods of weakening the American people. Number one is of course, biological war. And I mentioned to you COVID-1, when COVID-2 comes out and COVID-3, it's going to be ethnically cleansing. So it's going to kill certain DNA types. And think diabolically, think like your enemy. This was on 60 Minutes 5 years ago by a guy the National Counterintelligence Executive, Bill Evanina, on a Sunday night, 60 Minutes. He actually covered, they stole all this information from DNA databases, I think Ancestry.com and Ancestry 123 or whatever it was.
Mail-in DNA stuff and all, yeah.
Yeah, stealing DNA so it actually goes, so they can go in and actually kill races by DNA. And of course, the two races that are there's one main race. I won't get into the second race, but there's a primary race that is planning to stay around for eons and the future, which is the Han Chinese, HAN Chinese. And that's the elite race in China. So all the others, whether you're Caucasian, African Americans, Hispanics, all of those are so far below the water level for the Chinese communists. So we're all being targeted. And if you don't know where to look and how to connect the dots, you don't see it. And the book connects the dots. So the first one is cognitive warfare. The first one is biological warfare. Everyone experienced COVID, and it's not going to stop at COVID-1. I'm just going to leave it at that. The next one is drug warfare. And so fentanyl. The number that we know it to be in the intelligence community is double than what the government reports. The Biden administration reported 75, 77,000. Trump, same area, 75, 77, 78. We know that number to be double than what the government's reporting. That's 150,000 murders. The DEA likes to call it accidental poisonings or overdose. They went from overdoses to accidental poisonings. No, they're not. They are murders. When your enemy is distributing, by the way, the Capitol, The capital of illicit fentanyl in the world, production, manufacturing, is Wuhan, China, as well as the pill presses. And they ship those to the western coast of Mexico, southwestern coast, called Michoacan. And they partner with the drug cartels. The 6 Mexican drug cartels. They also use the drug cartels for human trafficking. They use the drug cartels for money laundering and so on. But let's go back to the number, 150,000. The last time the United States, the American people, lost 150,000 of our own was World War II. It's like World War II never ended. Let me ask you a question. Why are you not seeing fentanyl in the daily, hourly news? Because mainstream media is part of the problem. They are compromised. And if you're watching mainstream media, use this information now to find out your new news source, because you're being played by mainstream media. They're compromised and they are corrupt. That is my personal opinion from doing this for many, many years. So look at fentanyl again. It's the equivalent, 150,000. Okay, so that's more than if you put the Iraq War, the Vietnam War, the total of the 10-year wars, Iraq, Vietnam, and Afghanistan together, it still doesn't add up to 1 year of fentanyl deaths. It's an absolute efficient way to kill our military-aged young men and women every year methodically without any interruption. And so let's break that down further. 150,000. That's the equivalent of 2 737s going down every single day. And if you remember that the American Airlines CRJ went down at Washington National with a Black Hawk taking it out. That's the size of 1/3 of a 737. So one of those CRJ regional jets one of them is the equivalent of, three of those are equivalent to 1 737. So that's like 6 of those aircraft going down every single day. And that CRJ was in the news cycle for 3+ weeks. Okay, so why are we not hearing about 6 of those going down every single day? And I want the audience just to let that sink in.
And it was accompanied with this mass moaning and crying and wailing about it, which, like you say, was way out of proportion with what else is going on. Well, look at what we did with Vietnam. We killed 55,000 roughly in Vietnam, a third of that number. And we whined about that, demonstrated against it, rioted against it for years. Well, where's the rioting going on now for getting rid of fentanyl? You're right.
Well, that's exactly right. So when you really zoom into fentanyl, it's every family, whether it's a direct family or an extended family, every family has been affected by fentanyl. I can tell you in my network and what I do, I know of at least 100 fentanyl deaths since we've been doing this in my network. And it's very, very serious. So the other equivalent, it's 350 families going to funerals every single day. So why is this not being covered in mainstream media? Why is the Trump administration not covering this? By the way, I'm unbiased. I call it like it is. I just tell the truth here. Okay. I don't have a government pension I have to worry about the FBI coming after me or DOJ or a military branch coming after me. Our intelligence is our own and it's second to none. Incidentally, our CIA got our China desk and our China unit was blown up in the 2010s because one of our agents was discovered and illuminated all the other agents that we had dedicated to China. So our China capability went to 0 by the end of the 2010s. So that's really what's going on behind the scenes, and it should shake up everybody. Fentanyl is probably the best example of this unrestricted war. But remember, there's over 100 different methods. I just cover maybe a dozen in the book and the expose. But let's go a little bit further through drug warfare. And by the way, when you lose a family member to fentanyl, and some families have lost 2 or 3 members to fentanyl,
Yeah.
It destroys the family forever. Let me tell you, it'll destroy your will. Most people, it'll destroy your will to fight. Some of us that are absolute warriors that I know that are on this podcast, it just makes us even angrier and it makes us want to fight harder. So I know I'm speaking to brothers and sisters in the fight, but most people, most American people, are not warriors like us, and it just destroys your will to live and your will to fight. And I just want to be taken care of for the rest of my life. That's kind of the attitude that goes on. But let's go a little bit further. It's not just, and by the way, the fentanyl today is 6 times more powerful than the fentanyl that's been out for the past 3 years. And in fact, all the Narcan on an ambulance that they carry won't revive one patient now. They pretty much, if you want to save the person, you have to intubate them and get them to the hospital where they can continue to intubate and then hit them with heavy doses of Narcan. That's what the CCP has done. They've just amped up the potency of fentanyl. But let's look further. Vaping units. Vaping is much worse than smoking on the body. And the vaping units, first of all, you plug it into your computer. That USB has malware for your computer to steal all your data and information that you have on it. And all the information that you're going to put on it is sent to this Chinese Communist Party servers for big data, AI, and to sift out information, secrets, all your personal information, your personal family habits, how you'll fight in a war, what holds you and your family together, all the things that they want to know, not just DNA, but mentally, psychologically, family units, all these type of things. Your enemy is in a war. The problem is the military's not part of it right now, other than Iran, the Iran war. It's never from the CCP's perspective, and they follow Sun Tzu to this day. Win the war without fighting. The other thing that the Chinese Communist Party says, that this is a people's war. Xi Jinping, this is a people's war against the American people. And the last thing that Xi Jinping says, we must live, you must die. So the American people, we don't think like that. First of all, if somebody's fighting with us, or we're winning at a game, or we're losing at a game, all the clocks reset. My football team resets January 1st. We'll go to the World Series this year. We'll go to the Super Bowl this year. It resets. Not with China. We must live. You must die. So that's the mentality. So when you buy products from China, that's what you're sponsoring. You're sponsoring warfare against your own children and grandchildren. Every time you buy a product from China, whether it's online or whether it's at a big box store, or God forbid, the ladies out there buying knockoffs from DHgate, or cheap fashions from Shein and Temu, even using Zoom as a video conferencing product. So all these things, I just mentioned to you what TikTok was. So vaping mechanisms. The burners are made out of cadmium, a known carcinogen. Think about what that is at room temperature, and then think about what that is when it's heated up. So the burners are made out of cadmium. The metal's made out of cadmium. By the way, most of the stainless steel bottles and things that you buy, pots and pans from China, have heavy metals in them, cadmium and lead. Don't buy. You don't need. That's another reason not to buy Chinese. All your electronics are all weaponized against you. Everything that can be. Another quote from Xi Jinping: we will weaponize everything against the West. And that was out. He made that statement about 3 years ago. So even further, there are marijuana. The American growers are buying cheap Chinese chemicals, herbicides, pesticides, and fertilizers. Cheap Chinese chemicals that are extremely carcinogenic. And there are over 3,000 grow farms, CCP grow farms just in Oklahoma, another estimated 3,000 in Maine, another 3,000 or 4,000 in Colorado, and thousands up and down the West Coast. Number one, why are CCP grow farms ever even allowed? Why is the CCP allowed to purchase farmland outside of a lot of our strategic military bases. Well, that's for
Exactly.
drone deployment and espionage. So, we are so compromised. Our government has put us here, and our view and the only way out of this thing is the American people have to, number one, we have to move towards America 2.0. Let me give you the big picture.
Yeah.
We have to revitalize America. America is expiring. We're close to being completely expired at this point. We need to move to America 2.0. Our founding fathers gave us a fantastic tool called the Constitution. God gave us our freedom. Our freedom is protected by the Constitution. Our rights are given by the Constitution. And the power is given to the people, not the government. And the people give the power to the government. Over the past 30 years, the government has taken over the power to the people. And that's why we say we have to move to America 2.0 using the tool our founding fathers gave us, to stop buying Chinese goods and services, to put people in office that are going to fix this problem and not be compromised, which many of them are today. Many of our congressmen take CCP money in their reelection PACs. The other thing is foreign influence. Why do we allow foreign influence? Why can you lobby? You can pay Americans to lobby for your foreign entity and your state priorities to weaken the United States. You can't do that in China. You can't buy land in China. I can't buy companies and buildings in China. I can't put American apps on Chinese phones. Why do we allow all of this? We can't have a TikTok in China. It would never be allowed. They've banned Google, although Google helped tune their search engine called Baidu. So that's how deep this is. It's extremely complex. That's, again, why I wrote the book. I wanted the book to be less than 200 pages. Couldn't be done. It had to be a little over 400 to actually do the job and convey the message and to connect all the proper dots on what's going on. Back to you, Al. Put me back on track.
So that does leave us with the ability to do something about it. I think we know a lot more now, and then thankfully for people like you, that's becoming more open now to the society. But it still requires the individual to do something. We can't wait around for everybody else in the neighborhood. We can't wait around for everybody else in a state or in a region to gather together, can we, under the rules we live with under the Constitution. The Constitution is meant for the individual, not groups of people. And until we probably realize that, we will be stuck in this to some degree. So the question then becomes, how do we get to individual Americans who treasure their freedom individually and willing to take risk, as you have done in your life, and I have too, not knowing what the result was going to be, but knowing it was the right thing to do. That seems to me to be part of the solution. And as I was watching the Charlotte Coca-Cola 600 the other day, watching the crowd there reacting to the death of Kyle Busch, which would not necessarily affect everybody, but the tens of thousands of people that were there when the military was celebrating Memorial Day, they all got together, and at once they all reacted the same way. Everybody seemed to be on the same wavelength. And as I thought about that, I think that is the thing we have to do somehow with our people. We've got to get them back on a common thread, a same wavelength that says, we're not going to put up with crap. We're going to be Americans. We're going to live right. We're going to live well. And we're not going to put up with people trying to tell us what to do every day. Because there are more than enough people, and we'll have some on our podcast we're going to do on the growth of all the isms in the world, about how it really is to live under that. Their experience. People don't see that. They all think, well, if it doesn't work, as we talked about earlier, we'll just get something else, and we'll still have our iPhones. We'll still have all the stuff we got, and we got a check coming from the government. Isn't it great? No, it's not. It becomes dependence, not independence, right?
Well, that's true. And with dependence, out go all of your rights. By the way, your comment made you a great straight man. So what can we do? We figured that out for you. So number one, your enemy does not want three things to happen. Okay. And I'm speaking the nation state enemies, China, Russia, Iran, Pakistan, so on, but also the enemy inside the gates. That is the compromised government officials, compromised state, local, federal officials. So your enemy, and so that's my point. Your enemy, they want to stay in power and they want to keep the game going. Same thing with World Economic Forum, who want to. By the way, their model runs on communism. It doesn't run on capitalism. And incidentally, there's only two sides to the coin. There's one side of the coin is freedom, and the operating system for freedom is capitalism. The other side of the coin is communism, and the operating system for communism is communism. And there are no seven sides to the coin that the other people would like you to believe. This whole thing, democratic socialism, is so wonderful. It's another name for straight, hardcore communism. Just watch what Mondami's doing in New York City, straight out of the communist playbook. That is New York City. That is our most powerful city in the country that is taken over because our youth, our young, and the people that came here for freedom, the immigrants that came here from freedom that are naturalized, voted for this guy. And people think, wow, I want free money. I want a free check every month. Everything's going to be fine. What you don't understand is somebody's got to earn that money. Somebody's got to earn it. And money has to come from somewhere. And if that money's coming from the government, they have all the power over you. And oh, by the way, when you wake up that day, there's no longer the red, white, and blue flying. It's the red and gold flying, maybe even with back to a hammer and a sickle. So your enemy does not want three things. Number one, they don't want you to become informed. That is solved with the book, The Red Tsunami. If you become informed, they don't want you to unite. There is a movement next to the Red Tsunami called Freedom Forever .global, not .com, it's .global. It's a landing page today because it's under development and we're still seeking some serious donors. And eventually it'll be a membership organization just like a Costco membership, where you can go to get the truth on climate, the truth on the country, the truth on communism, the truth on Black Lives Matter, all these different things. You can get the truth. Eventually it'll have its own cable channel. It'll have podcasts like this up there. And more importantly, it'll tell you where to spend your money that's not funding the Chinese Communist Party. And it's group think and group action to where we're getting rid of foreign influence. So our congressmen will think clearly for the American people and not for the enemy that's paying them. And so it's basically a central destination. It's basically the patriot, the American people destination. I'd like to see 50 million people in it, and then eventually 100 million people, where that's how we take the country back. Now, the third piece, if you unite, you have to take action. And remember, the message here is don't look for your government to save your bacon. The only person that's going to save your bacon at this point in the game is you. If you follow football, we're in the fourth quarter. We're down by 2 touchdowns. We've got 2 minutes left and we're out of timeouts. So it's not that we can't do it, but we've all got to play serious now today. Remember, your government put you here. Our rare earth metals, why China has a chokehold on our rare earths is because your government allowed it to happen. You know, why we're bent over the barrel on the Strait of Hormuz. It's because your government allowed it to happen. All these different things. But the point is, the government has turned into a self-fulfilling administration. And the point is, the American people need a new set of founding fathers who have a plan where we all take our country back the right way. And I'm talking peacefully by voting with our wallets every day and by voting with our ballots every 2 and 4 years. Back to you, Al.
Well, and that's a long-term thing, but as you say, we have to do something now, today, and it starts with education. It starts with enlightenment and a purpose for our people. I keep coming back to this notion that if you want something to succeed that's damaging and harmful, your future is going to be really limited. If you are willing to take a risk and you're willing to apply your own energies to it, there's all kinds of possibilities that develop. There was a Frenchman back before the Revolutionary War who wrote a very historic piece called "What is an American?" And he was an immigrant, came straight from France to New England and set up a farm, and like everybody else was trying to figure out how he was going to make his way. He said what separated him from his comrades back home in Europe was his ability to act freely in his own interest, to use his labor to make something for himself and for his family, not knowing what the outcome was going to be, but sure that he was not going to be restricted by anybody else. He could worship as he wanted, he could live and buy things, and he could travel and be willing to risk going out in the frontiers to look for new opportunities. But that's I think the thing of the American spirit that we have to renew somehow. We've got to get people to refocus again, not on being part of a group that wears Palestinian scarves and demonstrates or goes out in the streets on a Friday night with our fellow teenagers to riot. Those are group activities, but individually, we need to determine in life what's going to work for us and the best results that we get for it. And that's, I think, the challenge I see out of your book, which in addition to being a pretty good survival guide, also gives us that hope that we can make those things happen by doing what's right in the world. And so,
Well, we all have to work together. And some of the things, number one, get the book in the hands. Like I said, everybody buy 10 books, get them out to people, tell them that they need to get 10 books. They have to become informed. The movement is to unite and to take action. That is where it needs to be. That's number one, is get the book out. Number two, stop buying Chinese goods and services, period. Stop investing with companies who are invested in China, because they are investing against freedom and America. What else? Fly the American flag in defiance to those who want to destroy America. Everybody fly that American flag everywhere you possibly can. The bold icon that that has been extinguished by the radical left and by the communists and so on. All these things that are happening, we connect the dots, or I connect the dots in the book. Once those dots are connected, you're now able to see what's really happening in the world. And when that new puzzle piece comes in today or tomorrow, you're able to plug that into the framework that you learn by reading the book. Now, the movement is a bunch of like-minded people, all working in unison towards taking America back and cementing our freedom. Remember, freedom is not free. Ronald Reagan says every generation must fight for freedom. It's not inherited. And it's honestly, that bird has now landed on everybody's kitchen table. That freedom is now on everybody's table, and it's theirs to win and to protect, or it's theirs to lose.
well, Casey, thanks for being with us today. And your book, which I've got a copy here, I've bought 7 more that goes with my family. So I encourage everybody, as you say, to go out and send a few more along here. It's very instructive. And if people don't like it, and they can put it on a shelf and then they can complain later. But the answers are very much in your book. And we're happy to have had you with us here today. Thanks for being part of Stars and Stripes.
Al, it's my pleasure. It's an honor to be with you.
And for our listeners, spread the word. Let people know what we're talking about today, because it's very important. And if you'll tune in next week, you're going to see another piece of this happening with a panel discussion of people who have actually lived through it. Now, Casey and I have not lived in a communist country and grown up that way, but we know what it's about. These people have actually done that, and they'll be here to talk about that with us. So until then, be good, stay American, and we'll see you next time around.